Welcome to Amplifying Recruitment. On today's episode, I'm joined by recruitment marketing expert Jade Brar-Haase. Jade goes through a whole host of hints, tips and tools that you can use to improve the marketing in your business. If you're a business owner, if you're a recruitment consultant, if you're an in-house marketeer, you're going to absolutely love this value-packed episode. Jade, welcome to Amplifying Recruitment. How you doing?
Thank you so much. I'm good, thank you.
So to kick us off, would you do a bit of a short kind of intro to you and what you do?
Yeah, sure.
Maybe a bit of background as well.
Yeah, okay. So for the background piece, so I've spent almost a decade in-house recruitment marketer. So I've definitely earned my stripes in that area. I get it, so to speak. And then the last couple of years, I got my CIM credentials and then did my MBA 2003, learning more of some of the strategic stuff and putting that to use. And I guess in that process, I kind of grew alongside my experience and professional credentials into founding Aquila, branded by Aquila. And so we support predominantly recruitment companies with their brand and marketing solutions. So that'll be either supporting C-suite if they don't have a marketing team, or an internal recruitment marketing team that either need an extra pair of hands or maybe they need some strategic guidance or even training for that team, because recruitment marketing is quite a niche. So even if you were to, send somebody on a CIM, them actually being able to translate that to the staffing industry is quite different. So yeah, that is why we exist, to help those people. And I enjoy it because there's a lot of clients that I've worked with in the B2B sector and also B2C. So taking some of the learnings from them and being able to apply them to the recruitment industry as well is quite interesting, helping them to stand out and think a little bit more differently about their approach to market and actually how marketing sits within their business.
Okay, cool. And so we'll dive straight in. When someone reaches out to you and they're like, we need help, what's the thing that people are asking for help with? What's the starting point? What's the thing that most people need?
I guess there's probably two camps of people that I pick up phone calls or emails from. You'll have some people where they'll say, we need help, but we don't know what that looks like or who it comes from or even how much it is, but we've been pointed in your direction. Can you help? And you have some people that are maybe a little bit further along in that journey where they know what their challenges are within the business. They're seeing what their competitors are doing on social media, podcasts, things like that. And they're thinking, okay, we need to do something. We're just not entirely sure what solution that is. And I think you've got an aspect in that where if they may think, okay, I need personal branding, but actually when we have conversations with them and we're drilling down to what is the objective, what are you currently doing, what has worked, what has not worked, we might say, actually look at this piece of the puzzle first before you start to invest in the personal branding piece, for example. So I think it's about understanding where they are in their own brand and marketing journey. Some people we go to, brand and marketing has never been a thing, and this is all very new for them, and we're kind of starting with laying foundations. With other people, they might say, okay, I just want you to work on 20 hours a month solely on email automation. That is it. Segmentation and data. So I think the positives out of that is that certainly the conversations I've had over Christmas and coming into January, it's that people know that they need to do something different from last year to stand out, and it's helping them with what and that educational piece that goes around that.
So there's quite a lot in there. So if you were to take the people that are, we need help, we don't know what with, and they don't have any sort of fundamentals and their marketing's a bit all over the place. Like what's your starting point with that? When you said like find out what the objective is, how do you do that? If someone's listening to this and going, God, that's me.
Yeah.
What can they do themselves? Like what would you be doing with them? What's the conversation?
So we would tend to go in, and I guess from a delivery perspective, it would probably start with being project-based. So quite a typical delivery would be if they had the personal branding, starting off a personal branding program, and then within that, a strategy piece. So certainly for us, if clients have a substantial amount of outsourced hours, so the doing of the marketing activity, you need a plan and a strategy in place so that we all know what it is that we're working towards. And, maybe we'll come back and talk about that in more detail. But it would be those initial projects. And part of that process is having a find out, a marketing find out, if you like, with the individual recruiters. So we'll have sessions with the recruiters within the business from all different levels, from juniors and grads all the way up to top billers, to understand their motivations and where they feel they could be better supported by having brand and marketing resources. And then we'll also speak to C-level to see what their desire is for the next 12 months and beyond that, so that we can offer them services which we know tick those boxes, because there's no point us going in and suggesting one type of solution when that isn't what they're trying to achieve. I had a client this week and they said, we categorically don't want to do email automation. That isn't a tactic that we want to look at. And so that's great, because I might have gone in there and then suggested, okay, there's this piece of the tech stack that we can look at. How does that integrate with your CRM and blah, 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 blah. So it's very much going in to identify what do they want, and also is what they want right for their objectives, because it may be, it's not their job to know everything about marketing. So it may be that we can challenge that perception of what it is that they need and say, actually, if you went with this tactic, you'd probably see better results in terms of awareness or lead generation.
And what do you do? Like something you just mentioned there, maybe think, oh gosh, that must be tricky. When you say we start with but we speak to the recruiters and we ask them, like, what's their objective? What do they want to achieve? What do they want? What do they think they need?
Yeah.
And then ask like the middle leaders, and then ask the C-suite, because I reckon you're getting very different answers from those three groups of people. How do you manage that? Because I think all of those camps could possibly get drawn in by like the shiny thing. Maybe recruiters more than anyone, that they go, oh gosh, that guy that I compete with over at X firm, he's got a podcast now. I need a podcast.
Yeah.
And then the C-suite's going, oh gosh, that brand over there, they've got a new website. We need a new website. And someone else is going, I know they're using automated messaging. And like, so where do you start with that? How do you manage those different groups?
I think when we've got different groups, it's once we've captured what it is that they want to achieve, the consultants on desk and their personal targets, and then obviously the business targets, it's about finding a common thread between them, and making sure that we can kind of keep everybody happy, but also making it clear that you can't do everything straight away. You have to build certain foundations to be able to grow from them, and some are more fundamental than others. It's looking at as well their existing tools and commitments and resources. So you take the podcast example, the resource and investment to be able to do that is quite considerable. And if you're going to do that, do you have a marketing team, or do you have an outsourced team that you're going to pay the hours to be able to manage that? Whereas actually there could be some quicker wins or some more low-hanging fruit that can still get them to that end goal, and maybe position them better to be able to appear on podcasts, and then start to pitch them to go into podcasts specific to whatever sector it may be. So it's just making them think in a slightly different way. You can see that your competitors are doing something. It doesn't mean you need to copy them. Actually, you need to do it differently and better, is what we're trying to achieve. We're not going in there to create a bunch of copycats. So it's up to marketing and the brand team to be able to understand what are the best methods for achieving that. And I think when we're talking with C-level as well, it's about the communication between the two. And I think marketers have a really pivotal role to play in communicating between different stakeholders and being able to take that language and then share pieces of information in ways that are slightly more digestible. And I guess one of the benefits I find when I go into businesses is because I've worked 10 years alongside recruiters, I understand how top billers have very different motivations and priorities to grads or 180 move into 360. So I think it's taking that all on, us going away and then digesting that into an actionable plan. Okay,
cool. You mentioned there the two words you used were foundations and fundamentals. Like, what does that look like for a typical like 20, 30 person recruitment business? What are the foundations and the fundamentals that they have to or should have?
So I would say, do you have a strategy / marketing plan? Because more often than not, I think I think accountability is a really big word, right? But we often think that it's quite a negative, or it has negative connotations, and we all say accountability and we all get a bit scared and we're like, oh God, I'm going to be, hang out to dry here. But actually it's to be accountable and to hold other people accountable. And we often forget that second part of it. And I think, when we're talking about what is it that we can do, it's actually saying to our C-suite stakeholders, okay, well, what's the corporate objective? What is the business strategy? Because you're expecting your marketing team to list out KPIs and different tactics and campaigns to be able to align to that, but what is it that actually looks like from a corporate perspective? And if we can start to align our KPIs to that, that would be far better. And then out of that, so say for example, the corporate objective is to open up in a new location and they want to bill 250k in the first year. Okay, marketing will then go away and say, okay, we're going to achieve that by delivering X website visits, X number of MQLs via email journey, and we want to double our impressions on LinkedIn, for example. The accountability side, so on the website, do we have budget to be able to update the website? From an email automation perspective, if you want to get in more MQLs, we're talking about accountability. Can most businesses truly say that marketing is the only person that feeds into what that email journey looks like in that content? The chances are marketing will draft out the email journey, it will go to sales or another stakeholder and they'll say, no, take out this, do this, do this. Then what's the point in having your marketing person lead that? You're asking them to be accountable for that KPI, so let them do that. And then the impressions on LinkedIn, well, how much of that are they relying on personal brand from the sales team? Because if they're hoping that, the recruiters are going to be really brought into personal brand, which will help them achieve those impressions, that goes back to making other people accountable as well. And I think that's not a scary thing. That's about collaboration and communication and empowering other people in the team to be a part of the overall objective.
Okay. Can I pick up on that, the personal branding bit? Like, what does that mean?
So it's not an ego-driven activity. And I think a lot of people, when they see videos and posts, they think, oh, God, just posting a picture of themselves again. It's not. It's a competitive advantage. And ultimately, being the best at what you do isn't good enough. It's about people knowing that you're the best at what you do and constantly being there. We talk about a marketing funnel and how many people are ready to buy. And the reality is that we've only got about 30% of those people are ready to buy. And so what are you doing the rest of the time? Are you just ignoring them and saying, actually, don't talk to me until you're ready? Because the onus is on us to stay in front of them and to keep them nurtured until that point. And when we look at personal branding, I think the last year or so, I think our recruiters have really understood what a personal brand is. They get personal brand now. Brilliant. Okay, we've ticked that box. But moving into this year, I think it's going to be a personal brand 2.0, so to speak. And so we need to be looking at things, I guess there's a two-pronged approach to it. So personal brand and linking it back to the company and the professional self. So within their personal brand, are they sharing company content? With their LinkedIn licenses, all of that data that we're spending a lot of money from LinkedIn for, is that going back on the CRM system for the time where we maybe can't afford LinkedIn licenses anymore? And then from the guys that are growing their personal brand, we need to be having personal brand roadmaps in place and linking that into professional development. So if you've got objectives or you've got appraisals saying, I want to increase my network on LinkedIn, that isn't really good enough. It's saying I want to increase my connections from 1,000 to 2,000 in the next 6 months. And then looking at that, just as you would say, how many calls did you make this month? How many connections did you send out this month? How many people have you taken from LinkedIn and put onto our CRM system, which should be your source of truth? So I think it's about getting them to understand how they can maximize their personal brand to see a better return on it. And, those conversations need to be had with the sales leaders about bringing in, smart goals from a personal brand. And then also from the company perspective, are you supporting your marketing team with sharing the company brand out to your individual networks?
Whose responsibility is it? The personal branding part? Is that the recruiter's responsibility? Is that the business owner? Where does that sit?
I think everybody's got a role to play in personal brand. I think you wouldn't expect your finance team to do a really good job if they couldn't use QuickBooks. So why do you expect your recruitment team to make good use of LinkedIn when they don't know how to develop a personal brand, when that's how you need to be able to use LinkedIn effectively, is to create that personal brand, make sure that it resonates with your target audience, and being able to use that 24/7 and leverage that. And I think the founders have a role in making sure that their team are upskilled with that information so that they can stand out against competitors. Your marketing team have a responsibility to be able to help guide them in terms of what content they can create, what does posting look like, or actually if they've got these connections, how do they review, how would they do A/B testing on posts and see how their network are responding to that. So I think marketing have a role to share their insight about LinkedIn. And actually it's quite exciting from marketing when you've got sales teams that are curious about new tactics and, they're thinking actually there is another way rather than just keep getting on the phone. And this is, we're in the 21st century. Let's start looking at different ways to do things. That's exciting for marketers to be able to take advantage of and to really kind of boost and push forward. And then I think ultimately sales guys need to look at 5-10 years ahead, and actually the transactional recruiter and picking up that phone all the time will die out. It's the people that have built relationships and that are delivering genuine value to their networks on the platform that their target audience chooses to be on.
And that in itself's tricky, isn't it? Like what you said, think about the 5 to 10 years, and I'm completely on board with that. But naturally recruiters tend to lean towards the more instant short-term gratification than if I do this now, in 5 years' time, it will really serve me well. So if I'm a recruiter and I'm listening to this now, and I don't have a marketing team, and I've maybe got a boss that's unwilling to invest in like that area, but I know that personal branding is key. What's a couple of things I should be doing, like right now?
I think if, there are a lot of free resources out of there. For example, myself, I put out a lot of videos on how people can define a personal brand. Then the next step to how to define your target audience and make it resonate with them. There are resources available to people if they genuinely want to upskill themselves to make sure that they're standing out. Because ultimately, from a recruiter's perspective, if they put in that legwork, they're going to get that back in commission, right? So why would you not invest in yourself to put yourself out there and to have that competitive advantage? I think then within that as well, they can start to look at, we mentioned about copycats. You can very much look at your competitors and look at other recruiters in different sectors to understand, okay, I really liked this because, but equally you can look at somebody else and say, I did not like that video, but why? And what would you do differently? And then it's a case of saying maybe that person's personal brand just didn't resonate with you. So that's going to help you define your personal brand and what kind of content you want to put out. Because I think if you can see that and you can make an assessment on if their content was good or bad, that's what your target audience are also doing. So you can start to kind of feel your way, and then they will obviously see through their own metrics from their own professional dashboard in terms of what is working and what is not working. And then I think it's a case of reaching out to people in industry that do have good personal brands and just asking them questions. Nobody's gonna, slam the door in their face.
Yeah, I think you're right with that. I think actually recruitment as an industry has got better at sharing ideas and best practice and those sorts of things. What are the mistakes? Like, what are the common mistakes that you see from recruiters when it comes to like personal branding?
I think the first one is still understanding this difference between personal brand and the ego side of it. There are a lot of recruiters where you hear them slate somebody's video, you'll be like, oh yeah, he's walking down the road again doing this selfie video. Oh, there's another one next Tuesday. They keep talking about it, but that's the point. You're talking about it and you know what it is that person's doing and what they've said in their video, and so do your competitors. So I think it's that case of getting through that barrier and thinking, actually, okay, I may be finding it cringy or I'm not quite ready to, but they are, and really kind of drilling into that.
Okay. Any other mistakes that you see? Because I think that's an internal thing, isn't it? Of like, I think it comes from a place of like fear, maybe, of not wanting to be exposed on camera. And that sort of stuff.
I would say that I think we had a question from a guy in a personal branding program the other day. He goes, oh, you know, they're just putting out like really cheesy stuff and it's kind of just, you know, it's just a bit rubbish. And I said, but that's the whole point. You need to understand what creates value to your audience. So I think if recruiters are doing a quick win and they're putting something out there which is really superficial, they haven't done much research behind. So for example, if they want to talk about something in industry, have they done their research and kind of looked around that topic to be able to support what it is that they're saying? Oh, that's a really big one as well, actually. Recruiters seem to think that they have to talk about what their target audience is an expert in. So let's say, for example, they were in engineering. You don't have to be an expert in engineering to be able to have a personal brand or to be able to share valuable content. They want to hear the recruitment spin on it. You're the staffing expert. So if you see something happening in industry, it's a case of taking that piece of let's say it's a blog article that you've read from an engineering magazine, and it's saying, okay, how do we add a staffing spin on this? How does this impact recruitment? What does this look like for hiring trends? And then it's giving that angle to people, because that's why they come to you, not for the engineering expertise, that they've got that bit covered. So I think that would be a common mistake, thinking that they have to be an expert in where their target audience is. I guess as well, I mean, I had a question once from somebody in L&D, and they said, oh, should you not be proofing everything they send out? No, because I think if somebody has worked in that sector long enough, you would like to think they could string a few words together. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be perfect, and if we're talking about long form content, of course, we would want oversight in that. But it's not feasible to be able to monitor every post that a recruitment team puts out, especially if you're in charge of, 40, 50 recruiters.
Yeah.
You need to give them the space and the empowerment to be able to write their own post. And if you see something that could be improved, it's not about shooting it down. It's saying, oh, next time you post that out, I would probably ask a question at the end to encourage engagement. Or actually, you could have taken this theme and maybe put it into a poll. Or maybe next time the language you should adjust slightly, because it maybe just sounded a little bit too conversational, and that doesn't quite work with, where we're going for this vertical within the company brand, and just giving them positive feedback about how to change that moving forward. And the reality is there's so much noise out there. There's so much, people are doing the death scroll all the time. And so somebody's not going to hold on to that one word that wasn't correct in that one post. Yeah. So there's a cost benefit there. Is it worth you monitoring every post that a recruiter puts out? No, I think be sensible. How much experience have they had in the sector? How confident are they themselves? How much have you been able to support them, and let them do it, and then grow as part of their personal branding grows? You can help them develop.
What do you say to recruiters then? Because I've heard this firsthand, is where a recruiter will say, but I'm a private person. I don't post on Instagram or Facebook or Snapchat or all the other sort of channels. Yeah. What do you say to help those people get comfortable being uncomfortable?
It's an interesting one. Again, a question I've had posed to me before on one of our workshops. People said, personal brand doesn't mean you all need to be in front of a video, first and foremost. You can have different levels of how you want to share your personal brand. You may decide that the written word is far more up your street, and that's absolutely fine. You don't need to put your face out there all the time. That's a conscious decision that you're making, just like if you want to use emojis or not. That's something that you're deciding for your personal brand. I would also say there's a role that you can play in your personal brand about supporting your company and supporting your peers. So if you're not confident enough to be creating content yourself, why don't you think, actually, what other consultants or who else is it that I can support in the business? And that's certainly true for resources. If they're not quite ready or they're not confident yet, well, you can be acting as a support to those that are, actually hiring or are more client facing, or those that are in a 360 role. So how can you support other people in achieving their objective? And that may be the marketing team. How is it that you can share more information? Or can you go to them and say, look, I'm not very comfortable with having my face on camera, and that isn't something that I want to do. But I would really like to put together a short infographic, just sharing some of the anecdotal information that I've heard while on my calls to candidates. So I think there's ways that you can share your personal brand that isn't invasive to your personal life. And, you know, I get that. And I think everybody's got a different opinion. And there is this criticism that LinkedIn is becoming like Facebook. And I do see that angle from people. And I personally wouldn't put out personal information such as, you know, my relationships, etc., etc. For me, that's where the line is. And this is my professional self. And it's about giving value to your target audience. Is my date night of value to my target audience? Probably not. They don't really care. Is me sharing insights about personal branding for their business important? Yes, it is. And that's what people want to be hearing. And I think more people are now taking the quite strong action to unconnect with people and to unfollow people if they're seeing more of the content, which is like Facebook, and that isn't what they want to see. I think people are actively going to their profile and unconnecting and unfollowing with these people. So I think sticking to relevance and value is really important in that. But ultimately, it is your personal brand. You can decide where that line is for you. I would just be mindful that people are getting frustrated.
Yeah. Okay, and then last question on the personal branding piece. Do you ever come across business leaders that are fearful? Like fearful that if we facilitate the creation of all these wonderful personal brands, that actually what we're going to get is all these breakaway companies. Like, is that a thing?
Yeah, 100%. I do think there is less of that now. I do think people are understanding because they're seeing their competitors and other recruiters that have invested in their personal brands, and they're seeing how that is working for the business. I do think that I'll give them some credit. There are less of those people, but 100%. You know, I've had conversations this month with people where they've been really kind of caught between, I want to be able to help the recruiters do more, but I don't want to help them so much that they build up this brand and then they leave. And I guess there's two elements to that. It's certainly if you've got somebody supporting your consultants with their personal brand, you know, that is managed to some extent, and it's their personal brand, but their logo is your company logo. They're sharing company resources and making sure there's that two-way street between the two brands is really important. And if you notice that somebody was really kind of out there, but it was never evident who they worked for and they looked like they were a lone wolf, then actually working harder to make the connection between the two. Don't be scared of that. Embrace that and think, hey, this person's personal brand is really kicking off. We want to make sure that we're supporting it and really being part of it. Because then the flip side to that is that you should be treating them well enough that they wouldn't want to go and have to invest in this all over again. And then that's an entirely different conversation. But I think you potentially have that problem in any department. Why do we see that upskill? Unfortunately, this is a part of upskilling that we have to embrace. LinkedIn is a massive tool. It is the recruiter's playground, and personal branding is a massive method to be able to leverage more from that, whether you're investing in LinkedIn licenses or not. And if you're not going to offer your team the training to be able to excel on that platform and ultimately get more money for your company, I'm not really sure what it is that you expect.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think because people don't hesitate to we don't want to make them too good at business development because they might win so much work they go and do it for themselves. I suppose it's maybe a similar thing, but I think you're definitely on something there with the. I've lost count how many times already this year I've heard a business owner say, once our contract expires, we will not be renewing LinkedIn licenses because of the cost impact of that. I think if you can counter that with, or actually through an organic free account, we've got inbound leads and all this other great stuff happening, then I certainly think people should be playing into that, right? And
then if you've got your process as well, if the guys are having these conversations with people through their massive personal brand they built through Recruiter, just making sure that all of that data is finding its way onto your CRM system. So if they did leave, you've got all of that information. You've still been able to benefit, not just from the data that they've been building in the background and the various hot lists, But you've also been able to benefit from them billing within your business. You know, there isn't a case where somebody's billing and you're not having revenue from that.
Yeah.
So if they are going out there and they're making, you know, significant strides in their personal brand, that people are actually approaching them. If I went into a business and I said to a founder, wouldn't it be great if people were approaching you and saying, can you recruit for us? You don't have to do BD anymore. People are actively coming to you, and because you're so busy, your fees are now going up. So to be in that position, they go, absolutely, 100%, I would want to do that. Okay, well, let's talk about personal branding then. And then you don't have to pay for your LinkedIn licenses anymore. They're building up their personal brand, but you need to be able to deal with the fact that there is that trade-off, but treat them well enough.
Yeah, absolutely. A very similar conversation came up in a recent episode where we were talking about, like, if your recruiters are so good, some of them at some point will want to leave your business and set up their own business. I think it's just part and parcel, isn't it? The nature of the industry that we're in, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Some great businesses are created that way. But
I think as well, you've got, with your top billers, there's also a responsibility there for them to be able to nurture the next wave of recruitment professionals, your juniors, your grads, your resources moving into a 360 role. And I think you should be able to find benefits in other ways as well. If you're worried that somebody is so good that they might leave, and we're accepting that is part of the life cycle of somebody's journey, not everybody's, but some people will then have the additional motivation to go on and do that. Wouldn't it be best to kind of utilize all of their ambition and drive and growth around personal brand to share that with more junior people in the team to help them be able to build up personal brands similar? Because if he's got a team of 10, I think it would be unlikely for all those 10 people to then follow the same footsteps and then leave. So I think it's soaking out the benefits and seeing this could happen, but what can we get out of it in the meantime?
Yeah, okay. So I'm just going to go back to some of the stuff you were talking about earlier. So your career, you've spent it like in-house marketing for a recruitment company.
Yeah.
And that's where you've like you said, you've earned your stripes, and that's where you spent a lot of your time, which is kind of unusual, right? Unusual. Like, lots of people come from they'll do their marketing degree, they'll work for an agency, whatever it is, and then maybe end up falling into recruitment. The other way I've seen it happen is people, you know what I'm going to say here, don't you? Is that there'll be someone in a business that started as a recruiter and's gone, do you know what, I just don't really want to do this anymore. The business owner doesn't want them to leave because they're a great person. And they're like, well, do you know what? They're really good at posting stuff on LinkedIn. You can do the marketing. They know how to use Canva.
Yeah.
And they're now the marketer.
Yeah.
Do you see that?
Yeah, 100%. I think, look, I'm not anti people entering a marketing industry from being a recruiter. Let's just put that out there. But you wouldn't have a marketer turn a recruiter and be on the desk calling clients on the first day. It wouldn't happen. You would put them through some form of training, whether it be outsourced training or internal training from somebody more senior, more strategic, that's had experience. But the other way around, that doesn't seem to apply. And for the millionth time, just because you manage your dog's Instagram account does not mean that you can do marketing for a business. The gig of a recruitment marketer is a tough job. And I think going back to our conversation about what is it that companies need to be able to grow, to be able to build more this year, what is it that they're looking for? You're asking some of these marketers with limited experience and limited skill set to give you the answer to that question. And when it doesn't work, you're turning around and saying, well, why didn't it work? Because they don't have the skill set to be able to do that in the first place. They don't have the ability to be able to communicate that information to shareholders, to be accountable, and to ask those questions or to set out a marketing plan. And I think we've got two things that we maybe need to consider there. We've got the side of training. Very often I hear marketers, they're looking for free training because they can't get any funding from management to be able to send their marketers on quality training, whether that's marketing or even recruitment marketing. So they're having to find quick, free, online, webinars that they can go onto. And don't get me wrong, some of that content is really good, but you're expecting them to get by with free resources and free training, but then you're expecting them to do a fantastic job and revolutionize your business into 3 different countries. You know, let's just be realistic about what it is that we're trying to achieve. And I think recruitment marketing is a challenging job. You've got many aspects to it, and what can somebody achieve within the time given? Let's look at some of the job specs that are out there at the minute for marketers, and they're asking them to be like genies. You know, you've got like 7 jobs in one sometimes. They want you to, we mentioned about podcasts before, and now marketing managers are expecting to be able to run a whole podcast while doing the SEO and the PPC. Oh, and the website updates while you're at it. And oh, actually, can we pull you off to help with the sales presentation which is tomorrow. So there's all of these things. I think we just need to be realistic with what we can expect from people, both at a certain skill set, level of experience, and how much exposure they've had to senior conversations and things like board meetings and marketing plan, because I think that it's very difficult to pull all of that together and be able to get genuine buy-in from C-suite teams. And asking somebody that has been a recruiter and now you've shoved them into marketing, asking them to do all of that is not the way forwards.
So is it, if I'm a recruitment business owner or founder and I find myself in that position where I didn't want Mary to leave, so we played to some of her, what we deem as strengths, right? That she does manage her dog's Instagram account, she's pretty good on Canva, posts on LinkedIn regularly, good person, culture fit, all that kind of stuff she gets us. But actually I'm listening to this and going, yeah, do you know what, you're right, we're asking too much of her. What are the steps? So back to the thing you said earlier around foundations and fundamental, and have a strategy and an outcome. I involve her in some of that. Like, what else can I do?
I think you would get, so like one of the solutions that we look at is if you've got somebody that, you know, drive is really important. Like you said, they've got some strengths, they've got that real drive to learn more about marketing. Then you bring somebody like myself in to help them understand the foundations and what are the building blocks that we put in place at this stage of marketing. And you let that person feel part of that, they're steering the ship from an internal marketing perspective, but they've got somebody there that is supporting them with building the strategy. So depending on the level of experience that person has, you might have somebody like myself go in and I'll do the strategy and the marketing plan and then deal with Simon to be able to deliver on that. But we're not just saying, okay, you do this, you do that. We're explaining to him, okay, this is how the strategy is formed and this is how we create it. And these are the elements of the marketing plan. And when we've communicated this to the CEO, this is the kind of language that we've used. And these are the KPIs that we've explained to him that he'll be able to see, and how all of these different things we can put in place. So it's that person is kind of learning on the job, and they've got a safe space in which to be able to ask those questions, which are relevant to their business, and also how their team and their processes are working, because I think recruitment business is very dramatically based on tech stack, size, organizational structure. So being able to ask questions that are directly relevant to your business while growing and being able to steer that is really important. And then ultimately, the next time that the budget comes around and setting the marketing plan, Simon should be able to come in and feel a lot more confident. Okay, I'm going to have a stab at the first draft of this, and then we're going to sit down, we're going to look at that together, and then I'll be able to use those questions that C-suite might have to be able to challenge Simon on why he's put those in there. How does that achieve that objective before it goes to a senior stakeholder, and then he has to deliver it and talk through those challenges. You know, there's tools and methods in place to aid people when communicating a marketing plan, such as a SAFE framework. I love that framework because it really puts the decision making through a top tier lens, shall we say.
Just tell me what that is. So a SAFE framework.
Yeah, so you would have your marketing plan and you would pull out all of the activities into a table, I guess, let's say. You would put those all in there and all of the different resources, and you would add in a column for time and cost. And then at the end, you've got like a scoring matrix. So you've got suitability, acceptability, and feasibility. Now, as a marketer, based on your lens, it is your job to go through and put that score in place at the end of each activity. And then it gives you a total. Now, some decision makers will go in and filter the total. And they'll say, okay, the ones with the highest score, do the top 10. But obviously, it's about explaining to people, okay, well, while this one has scored 12th on the scale, your return from that is likely to be far higher. The reason it appears 12th is purely down to suitability, let's say feasibility, for example, in terms of resources or perhaps budget. But that decision is then with the senior stakeholders to make, so they can see it really clearly why each activity is ranked across those 3 areas of the matrix to make an informed decision. And I find that is really useful for marketers to be able to explain in their mind and how they're approaching it, but then put that into a qualification or a visual tool for stakeholders to understand.
That's brilliant. So can I hold on to that for a second? Can you give me an actual example? So of something that would go on there and then put it through the safe.
Yep. Okay. Let's take, for example, a breakfast event. So you're going to do, so one of the ideas.
Like a breakfast networking.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to say, we're going to invite 15 of our target audience to a breakfast. And within that breakfast, we might put on a talk, or we're going to have a bit of a round table around some key discussions, maybe invite in 2 people from industry that can maybe kind of help probe on those points. So we're going to plan for this event. We're going to work our way up to it. These are the costs. It's a little bit more costly than maybe running a LinkedIn ad. You may even have LinkedIn ads as part of that if you wanted to promote that you're doing it, although probably not, because you're going to define your target audience and send them out invitations. But you would define your cost. So I guess from a suitability, is it suitable for us to be able to run this activity? So when I say suitability, I mean really aligning to what it is that the business is trying to achieve. So looking at that top tier business objective and then the marketing KPIs. Yes, brilliant. That is 10 on a suitability.
And we're scaling it on a scale of 1 to 10.
Yeah, 1 to 10, yeah. And 10 is your green. That's positive. We love that. We love anything that's green. And then we've got acceptability. So how is this going to be accepted by stakeholders within the business? And we might say, okay, we think that the founders are going to be really on board for that because, they're deciding who's in the room. It's branded by them. It's from a reputation perspective, they're putting this on. This is really quite significant. We're bringing in these industry leaders. Finance might say, oh, that's a little bit expensive. Can we justify the cost? What's the return? For every £100 that we're spending, what are we getting back on that? So it might say, actually, in terms of acceptability, we're going to maybe drop this down to a 7 or an 8, let's say. And this will obviously depend on who is filling this out in terms of how pessimistic they are.
Yeah.
We just always try and apply some balance to that as we go through. And then you've got the last one, which is feasibility. So this looks at things like budget and resource. Now, again, depending on who's filling that out, if they already have a budget set, they'll have a bit of a better idea as to if this would be signed off by stakeholders or not. But you've also got things like resource. Does your recruiter, which is now your marketer, which has a month worth of experience and not much skill set, are they able to advertise, bring in the industry leaders, execute so that it's all seamless, book the event space, make sure that everything goes off without a hitch? Actually, how feasible is it to run that activity? And based on that quite dramatic example, we might say, okay, that's a 6. But we put that in the matrix and then we deliver that score, and let's say it ranks 14th, and so we've got an amber overall. So your 10 was a green, then we've gone down, we've got an amber, and then we've got a red for feasibility. Overall, we're sitting at an amber. We might think, okay, we want to ignore any ambers. But actually, drilling into that, if I was an in-house recruitment marketer and they looked at that and they said it was an amber, they might say, actually, Jay, we noticed that your feasibility is really low. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? And I said, well, actually, I'm not very confident in being able to leverage some industry leaders. And also, I'm a little bit worried about the cost because obviously we're going to want to see return from that. a CEO might turn around and say, oh, that's okay, because I've got a few industry leaders that I think we could bring in, so I can help you with that. And I think that probably brings us up to an 8. And then from a cost perspective, I think actually the brand awareness and the credibility from that more than pays for itself. So I think you could probably bump your feasibility up to a 10. And then before you know it, that's then jumped to a 2. So sometimes it's having those conversations to understand why did they rank so low in one category. But that's opening up the communication, right?
Yeah.
You've been able to... Marketing's been able to approach its brain, and then stakeholders have been able to approach theirs, and then together you've met in the middle to have a conversation, which is the most important thing. Everybody is then on one page, and by the time I've been able to deliver my event and I'm working through that, I don't need to explain why we're doing it, what are the cogs that are going to make this happen, because everybody was already brought into that process when we signed it off 7 months ago.
Amazing. I love that framework.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
I get a bit geeky with frameworks.
Yeah, I think that's so good, and I think there'll be so many people listening to it go, gosh, like that's something I can implement. I just want to ask a question here around something you said in there about it being accepted, and you said like finance, the accepted, the cost too high. What's the return on that? Mm-hmm. Like that ROI, return on investment, is something that gets, I would imagine, pushed back at you as a marketer all the time.
Yeah.
How do you deal with those conversations around what's the return I'm going to get on my investment? Especially if I'm a business owner and you present me with, we can do this, and this is the cost.
Yeah.
It's going to be £30,000 to work with us, and we're gonna this is what we're going to map out and do. Mm-hmm. And they say, well, how do I measure what's coming from your work?
So you would have different activities, obviously have different metrics that you would associate. So let's take the event as an example, and run with that one. So in terms of the ROI for that, I guess the easiest metric that we would be able to pull from that event is how many people have we been able to attend, and how many conversations or meetings have we had booked in post the event with those decision makers. That is as far as marketing can go with that. I can't tell you if my salesman's going to be able to come in at the event and then close a deal off the back of it, because that's kind of out of my hands. But what I can tell you is I'm going to get 20 people in that space at that time. We're going to deliver them highly engaging content. We're then going to share that to other people. We're going to get some feedback forms after to be able to maybe have some sort of scoring system on there to see how it's been delivered. We're going to build some content off the back of it. So actually, I would probably break that event down into multiple metrics to be able to measure off of the back of that. And I think certainly since COVID, when I did my dissertation for my MBA, I focused a lot on the relationships between marketing and other departments within business and how COVID has changed that. And a lot of the founders that I spoke to said that actually their understanding of return has somewhat changed. That's not to say that they don't want a monetary return, but actually return can mean other things, such as awareness, such as how many people are they networking at this event. So somebody might not be ready right now, or they might not be the decision maker right now, is another one to look at. But they might be in 6 months' time. So actually getting in front of those 20 people and then being able to nurture those relationships and give them the value in that session that they need will eventually lead to a monetary return. But for that event specifically, we're going to be looking at how many people can we get there, what was the feedback like, and how many meetings did we have booked off the back of it.
And are there some activities where you just can't measure the return on the investment?
I think you can always measure, again, going back to what the activity is in terms of what it is that you're measuring. So let's say you were looking at some social media metrics, for example. You might be looking at how your engagement rate is going up in line with your follower growth. You might still have an eyeball on impressions, but that might be something that you're focusing on. Perhaps community and building communities is a really big thing for your business. So while you want to be getting impressions and followers, maintaining that engagement and growing that engagement across your audience is really important. So actually your metric for there is the engagement rate, looking at how many, clicks and comments and reactions you've got on things. That might be something that you drill down to. So it's not to say that it can't be measured, but from somebody looking at your post, I can't say that post has given you £3,000.
Yeah, okay.
Unless, of course, they've come back to you and said, oh, I saw your post, Can you come in for a meeting? In which case, your line of attribution is fantastic.
Yeah.
But it doesn't always work like that.
Okay, excellent. That's been so helpful, and so much value in there that I think people can like go and apply and use, which has been really good. A question I ask everyone that comes on this podcast is, what do you think the next 12 months look like for the recruitment industry? I'm going to ask that question slightly differently with you.
Okay.
Is like, what do you think marketing is going to look like for the next 12 months across the industry?
I think it will be a slow Q1 and Q2. I think as people maybe still are a little bit cautious, but they're already thinking, okay, in Q3, I want to have some stuff in place. I think there are people that are excited about the year ahead. And as I said at the very beginning, there's people which are saying, I need to do something different this year. And I would say, don't be a company that waits for Q3, Q4, like everybody else. You should be jumping on it now to make sure that you've got those foundations in place to be able to then really ramp up those cogs to what they're capable of in Q3 and Q4. So I think that there is a lot of excitement, because I think businesses are embracing that they need to do something different. And I think for me personally, the personal brand 2.0 is exciting, making sure that we're embedding that into our recruiters' professional development. That's something I really want to champion this year, as well as the strategic marketing plan. And you need a skill set and you need experience to do it. But if you can do things like adding on the SAFE framework, your value rockets exponentially. So, if we can start to communicate these things with our stakeholders, even internal recruitment marketers that may not necessarily be looking to outsource, they want to grow professionally, actually looking at a course that is really going to help them and in return help their business. And I think that while overall it's a really positive picture, and I think that the year will get better as we go through it, I do think there are some recruitment marketers that are already tired coming into January. I think they were tired, after Christmas when the year ended, and I think they've come back and they thought, it's the same old, this is hard. And I think for those people, it will be a bit of a slog. But I hope that the second half of their year does pick up. But I would say that's probably the minority. Overall, I think people are excited to be trying new things in marketing, which is great. I think whenever we're looking to try something new and to change something and to really take action, that's an exciting place to be, because you know that you can learn from that and you can grow. Whereas if you do exactly the same thing that you did as last year, you're probably not going to grow.
Excellent. Jade, thank you so much for coming in today. That's been absolutely brilliant.
Thank you very much.